Get this going and let's
Make
fire
sure
it
I
up,
look
man.
good.
We are recording. All right, man. Welcome to Over 50 Starting Over, everyone. I'm Barry Edwards.
And I'm Merle Garrison.
And this is the end of season 1. This is a
Wow.
milestone for us. Number 25.
Number 25.
Yeah,
Wow,
and
man,
we've
that's
come a
pretty cool.
long ways. And you know what? We've not missed a week. We've not
That's
missed
pretty
a,
amazing.
We almost did. Remember?
we almost did. A lot of things almost happened.
A lot of things did happen. We've had recordings where we forgot one or the other of us didn't turn on our microphones. And
we've even forgotten our own names.
I called myself Merle Garrison that one time. That's a first. That's a first. Let's see what the show that I think I forgot to hit record or something. Was that it? I think it was our Thanksgiving special.
I'm not. I think it was the quality. Was it? You forgot. You forgot to hit record.
I think because it was pretty early on. We started in like early to mid-November of last year,
right?
And I'm sure it was a Thanksgiving special because after we got off the lines and everything, that's when I start to upload things and mark it up, and that's when I discovered I didn't have it. I didn't have it anywhere. And I'm driving. I didn't want to call and tell you. And I'm driving to the store because Thanksgiving stuff. And I was so bummed. And I really didn't want to tell you. I had a lot of anxiety over it. And I called you and, we both went through the whole, damn, really? It was a good one too.
I'll never forget.
I don't know. One or the other said, want to redo it? But I just remember being shocked. You're like, yeah, let's redo it. I was shocked. I thought we were just going to let it go. But it really meant something to me, your commitment to it. So like I said, we were very early on at that point. I thought that we would miss a couple shows here and there, which is a terrible thing, honestly, to build an audience. It's a terrible thing to be inconsistent. And you were like, you just were totally committed to it. And we redid the show. It was even better. If you go back and check out our Thanksgiving Eve special, it was good. It was really good.
I thought it was one of our best, actually, and I'll never forget the phone call because after the show was over the first time, I was feeling really good about it.
Yeah,
and I
that's
came
why I was
downstairs and told Anne Marie what a great show we had and everything. And I'm, hey, Barry's calling. And I get the call, man, and like I could tell by your hello, something bad was going on, man. And I was just like, I remember for like the first like few minutes of the call, I inherited your anxiety immediately.
I just put it on you.
Yeah, it came from Ohio all the way to California, and I was like in the cloud with you, and I felt so horrible. But then when you said let's do it over again. Of course, I didn't want a bad show. I wanted to make sure we served our audience, and but I do also remember coming up into my my studio and really feeling this angst about how are we going to do this show and talk through all these things that we so spontaneously talked about.
Right.
And now it's going to be kind of like acting now. It's going to be like, hello, Barry.
Right. Like we're reading our lines. Now
now you're supposed to say this.
We could probably do the same topics over and over again, and it would be pretty different each and every time,
Well, it's the big deal that we learned all along this 25 episode process. It's every time we do a show, we learn something else, and it's usually by screwing something up.
Oh, for sure. Of course, you got to screw things up in order to learn. So this show, we're at least starting with taking a look back and a look forward at our dreams. And, but we got a lot to look back on as I thought about this show coming up, and I thought about how the first and second episodes were so interesting, and we didn't have a name for it. The first show. I think it was number one. I think it was number one. I threw out to you my whole over 50 starting over concept that I've been writing blogs on and all that. I've created a ton of content for over 50 starting over, but just not the podcast. And you were immediately right there in the show. I unveiled it to you on the show, and you were like, yes, that's perfect.
Well,
And
it had everything to do with just,
yeah,
the situation I found myself in where I
yes.
really was starting over and still am. And,
Hmm.
it just made sense. And the show has really taken on a life of its own. It took off. And I think about how, we talked about this for a long time before we actually put this out. And it's a matter of years that we've talked about this
Hmm.
because, Barry, we'd have these outstanding phone calls, always our phone calls. We've
Oh.
been friends for so long,
Hmm.
since college, and we've kept up with each other this whole time. And gosh, we'd have these conversations, and I'd always leave the conversation feeling so good and so uplifted.
Yes.
But usually by the end of the conversation, you would say, "We need to record this." So we
Yeah.
need to record this. People would want to listen to this. And
Yeah.
I remember thinking, what are you, crazy?
Mm.
Nobody wants to hear our conversations. But then it came around to this summer when you and Lisa came out to
Yeah.
visit Southern California, and we had a chance to get together and everything. And this was actually before a lot of changes were about to happen in my life. And
Hmm.
you posed the whole concept again that we should do this. And for some reason at that time, I was feeling like, hey, maybe that is something that we should do. And
Oh, I was feeling like I was starting to feel kind of anxious about that I was dropping the ball, that I wasn't finally putting it into action. It's because there's a lot to it. There's a lot more to doing a podcast, to doing it right, than I'm sure most people realize. Getting the technology together, figuring out your brand. That's really important. There's probably 100 million podcasts out there today, and most of them are just terrible because it's two people talking about their work to try to promote it, and it's basically what it is. And it's I don't think it's that good. But if you got chemistry, it's a tough one, man. We're lucky that we
yeah,
have this chemistry. And so we would get off those phone calls, and I've been a very avid podcast listener for years now. So uh, I know what I like and I know what I don't like. And our phone calls would be about an hour and a half.
right, right.
I would get off the phone. Lisa would always say, "Man, you're so full when you get off the phone with Merle. You're beaming and stuff, and you're intellectually stimulating. We just absolutely love each other, and we respect each other's opinions so much. We learn a lot from each other."
It's so funny, Barry, that the show is basically just like our phone calls that we were
Yes,
having. We
that was
covered
the
a lot
intention.
of the same subjects I
Yes,
mean, it was almost the same format.
that was the
We'd
intention.
usually end on politics
Yes,
in our phone calls as well,
yes.
and just
Hmm.
kick things back and forth. And the cool thing about it too is always this ability for us to see the other person's point of view
Hmm.
and put each other in each other's shoes, if that
Hmm.
made sense.
Yeah.
We could empathize with each other. And that's actually been a part of our friendship
Mm.
since day one, that we could do that. It's
Hmm.
been really an amazing thing that we've been able to bring on. And just like you said, chemistry, you can't make that up.
No.
That's a natural thing. It's either you got it or you don't. And it
Hmm.
turns out that that's really the magic of the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it was by the second podcast, I was unveiling the logo to you and the banner and
Ah,
stuff. That was
I was blown
exciting.
away. I was blown away. Let me
Yeah.
just say, Barry, the you putting the website together, the picture of you and I
That
on
we
there, and
took.
that was just a spontaneous picture. I think Anne
Not
Marie and Lisa
really.
took that. Well,
But
I
we
didn't
took
know it was
it.
going to be for the show.
Yes, we talked. We did. We talked
Did
about
we
it.
really?
Yes, that
Okay, I
that
didn't
picture
remember
was
that.
for the show.
I did
Yes.
not remember that. But
Mm.
I remember when you put it on our logo, I was like, hey, that's really cool. That looks really neat. And the way you were able to snap everything together like that,
Mhm.
you were also the one that recommended the microphone technology. And
Mm.
we worked on what kind of camera we were going to have,
Yeah.
and even the lighting, which, by the way, today is the first day that Barry was able to get the lighting. So it took 25 episodes.
I
Way to go, man.
I added an important, more professional piece to my lighting because I have a while back ago when I first started shooting video, not podcasts, but videos for my own purposes, my business purposes. I saw a YouTube video on how to make these lights out of the cheapy kind of tin metal cone with a little light bulb in it kind of thing. And you put these, cut up a white shower curtain and put that over it to diffuse the light. So I have a couple of those, but I finally added a professional light to kind of fill in my face somewhere because I've had the most inconsistent lighting that we can imagine. But even still, I wanted to hopefully be able to, and I know most people actually listen to our podcast, not watch it, but so I'll describe. I was having to change my computer, my desk around a bit to hide the windows because when your camera autofocuses, it reads the light. And even right now, I got this window right behind me. It's very bright. It seems very bright out there at the shade pulled. And so it darkens the forefront. So even right now, if I changed back to where you can't see these windows behind me, I would be very bright, very bright.
Right.
But I was hoping but I like this. This is how I work. This is like, I didn't have to rearrange my desk or anything. And so I wanted to get back to that. And I got my cool pictures from Italy in the background.
That is pretty cool back there, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And it looks like a beautiful day in Cleveland, Ohio.
It's pretty, it's a little cool, but yes, it's very nice. It's 50, but very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, NFL draft tonight. Not that. Bet you don't care at all.
I could care less, actually, but I'm happy for those who are into the NFL.
Well, I don't care about the draft. That's like watching a high school graduation.
You know, a lot of people love to watch that. It's unreal. I remember one year, and even when I was really into the NFL, I remember one year watching it with a friend of mine, and I couldn't believe how excited he was about the whole thing. I couldn't really get into it.
No, I can't either. I mean, just sit there and wait. And then just to have, these young guys get up there, get drafted and say the same thing about how honored they are to come to this program and blah, 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 blah. But I can't wait to find out what Cleveland Browns do. But honestly, what my biggest interest is in this upcoming NFL season is the fact that Tom Brady left the New England Patriots, probably more so that Bill Belichick ousted him, because he does that. He, right when there's no more value to be, squeezed out of somebody, he lets them go because it's time to rebuild. And he's the best at it. He's consistently a champion. So the interesting thing is, if we have this season, and I hope to God we do, because of this reason, it's always been a debate. Did Tom Brady make Bill Belichick, or did Bill Belichick make Tom Brady? And so now Tom Brady went off to Tampa Bay, and even more interestingly, his Hall of Fame tight end that was with him for years in New England came out of retirement to come to join him again in Tampa Bay. So this is like really exciting. And
wait,
now,
who is that? Is it Brewski or?
Now you got me messed up. Gronkowski.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes. So you know that much.
Gronkowski. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't even know who's going to be the quarterback.
Brewski.
Yeah, Brewski. I don't know who's going to be the quarterback for the New England Patriots, but Belichick, he's an amazing coach. And
yeah, he is.
It's a plug and play system. Well,
hold on. Let me just back up a second on Belichick, because we're both from Cleveland.
Yes.
It's hard for me to respect that guy.
I know.
I realize that he's a genius, but when he was the coach of the Cleveland Browns, it was this guy's a genius and he's going to turn the team around. And I don't know that the Browns had done any worse when he was the coach of the Cleveland Browns. Remember, it was his genius play was Metcalf up the middle. The guy was 146 pounds.
I know. Dude, that was kind of like the beginning of the curse that has been about 25 years and counting. And it really was. He cut his teeth here. And
Yeah, that's
he
true.
was
That was his first head coaching job.
exactly, and he made a lot of mistakes. I think it was Kozar.
Yeah, it
He
was.
finally made up with Kozar after a lot of years, and
Really?
he admitted to Kozar. He said, "I really effed up in Cleveland."
Well, it
And
was the diminishing skills comment that really ticked me off
it ticked us
when they
off, but
got
it
rid
was
of him.
true. But it was true.
Well, he went over to Dallas and brought them all through the playoffs and everything right
Yeah.
away. And I remember thinking, oh, diminishing skills.
Mhm.
Ugh.
Oh, and we were all rooting for that. No, we were
Right.
all pissed off, and it was a terrible time. It was the beginning of the demise of the Browns, and that's
That's
kind of
true.
what this place has been since then. And people come here to cut their teeth and then go somewhere and find better success.
Yeah, that always really ticked me out. I'm getting mad all over it.
Well, I'm hoping that better days are here now. Another thing that shows that the curse is still here is in 2018 season. Midway through the season, we fire the head coach and the offensive coordinator, and that turns the team around into a juggernaut. So we see them go 5-3 the rest of the season.
Right, right.
The excitement's through the roof, and then our GM messes up everything and anoints Soft Freddie Kitchens as the head coach, and it was down the tubes once again.
Soft Freddy.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's not a good nickname in the NFL.
No, he was so soft, so soft.
I remember at the beginning of the season, you were so excited, and I was like, I kept looking at the stats and going, I wonder what Barry was excited about, because that was dismal.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was terrible, and that just kind of shows you, well, that curse is still here. I mean,
That's terrible.
to show us that promise and then pull the rug out from it. It was the longest off season of my life waiting for that.
I can imagine.
Last year, and then the first game, they laid an egg that was prophetic for the entire rest of the season.
It was sort of a foreshadowing.
It sure was.
With the whole season. I remember seeing the score after that, and I'm like, uh-oh, that doesn't look good.
And the whole nation had us picked to be a juggernaut, really.
But isn't that, like you said, it's the curse. I don't know how you take it, Barry. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, that's been my entire life of being a fan of the Browns. It's been, what a freaking letdown, man. I mean, there were times, I remember one time watching a game, and I was alone, and I remember being so mad at the end of the game, I overturned furniture in my own living room.
I don't doubt it.
So angry.
I don't doubt it. We were both pretty rabid back then. I'm to the point now, I mean, easily the last 6 years, maybe 7. I don't yell anymore. I used to, like, if I were at a bar and they were on, I couldn't help it. It would be like, and,
right.
I couldn't help it. And now I could be at home in the privacy of my own living room, and it's like, In fact, what I normally do is I'm outside washing the cars or something like that, and I have it on inside, and I have it on the radio, which is like 7 seconds ahead. So if there's actually a good play, then I run over to the window and watch.
So you can watch it.
Watch the play on the
That's
on the
pretty
TV.
cool.
That's my system.
But I just think about what you just told me is that you've basically figured out how to tranquilize yourself.
Detach. Yeah.
So that you don't actually go through the emotional roller coaster.
That's it, man. And then I don't know what it is about Cleveland, but you can count on Mondays to be gray and cloudy. So you got a Browns loss and you wake up to a gray and cloudy Monday. It's like you wonder why I get that seasonal affective disorder.
I hear you. I went through it with you. It's really a thing. I mean, it really is a thing. Gosh, man, that was part of my whole reason for getting away from the NFL. I had some other reasons as well, but I got to tell you, I feel free, man. I mean, I feel like
it's like you kicked a drug addiction.
Yeah, it is like that.
The monkey off your back.
Like that.
Right. Wasn't it Kaepernick's kneeling the final?
It had everything to do with that.
Yeah,
it was just like, wait a second. This is actually, it went back. I have to admit, I remember when right before the Super Bowl, Obama came on and talked about how if he had his son, he wouldn't let him play football. And I remember telling my wife, "Oh my God, he's aiming for the NFL. He's going to ruin it. He's going to wussify the NFL." And sure enough, right after that, these things started to happen, and it was just like, thanks for injecting politics into my beloved NFL.
Yeah. I was trying to move my screen a little bit, see if the lighting got any better.
Oh, you're looking good.
But no, I agree with you. But I also think it's inevitable that the NFL gets wussified. I'll bet you it peters out at some point in the near future. For one, it's kind of common sense that they find out about the amount of damage, the concussions that have been sustained.
It's a
You
real
can't,
thing, Barry. I
when
mean,
you
it's
got
a
the
real thing.
awareness, you can't
Yeah.
just keep doing that to people.
No. And you can see, I mean, first off, I don't know if legally they're going to be destroyed that way,
Mm,
because, I mean, the
mm.
lawsuits that are
Oh,
coming
true.
against the NFL have been amazing. But my own cousin who played semi-pro football, two of them, Keith and Joe,
Mm.
both died of ALS. And
Wow.
and now this is a disease that only something like 1% of people, the disease is hereditary.
Mm.
And if you've ever seen what ALS does to a person,
I haven't.
it's got to be the worst way to die. What happens is you slowly lose your ability to coordinate your muscles. Your nervous system is attacked, and so first you won't be able to move your arm, and then it'll go to the other arm, and then to your legs, and pretty soon what happens is it shuts down your breathing system, your ability to breathe, and you can't move your body. We were with Keith all the way to the end, and in the end he was 100% paralyzed. He actually couldn't even move his face anymore.
Was his mental faculties all there though?
Yes.
Oh, that's
And so
terrible.
it really was. So he was trapped in this body that was diminishing day by day. And this guy was a former athlete,
Mm,
and it was really hard. I'll tell you what, though, the man had superior character.
mm,
He even when he couldn't use his voice anymore, but he could still use his lips. Anne
mm.
Marie could read lips, so he was still the center of attention. I mean, he was making jokes. He was
Wow.
he was doing things to cheer us up. A real tribute to his character and his
Yeah.
courage. He had a decision at one point to go on the respirator
Mm.
or let things naturally happen, but he knew that if he went on the respirator, it was going to be a long, hard road. And he chose
Yes.
to go on the respirator. He decided that it was better to stay and be with us. And so
Wow.
this whole experience, we were with him even at the day he said to us that once he could not do anything else, to pull him from the respirator. And so we were with him in the hospital the day that he pulled the respirator. I play guitar, as you know, and he loved to hear he forced me to bring my guitar every time we went every weekend. Forced me to bring my guitar, which really didn't really have to twist my arm that hard. But I played my guitar and worship songs and everything all the way to the end. And when he left this earth, it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen, Barry. It gave me comfort in passing on to the next world
Mm.
because, of course, he was a Christian and he was 100% paralyzed. And they pulled him from the respirator. And I'll never forget, his eyes opened up. It looked like he was seeing somebody in the room, and this almost like he was glowing. And this the most pleasant smile came across his face, as if he was seeing somebody that he completely adored. And then he just faded away, like
Mm.
he left his body. And I mean, talk about a sign that there was complete peace. He was 100% paralyzed. He couldn't
Mm.
move his face. He
Mm.
actually moved his face and made an expression, and he just kind of like, it was almost like he was going off to the most happy place you could ever
Oh,
go,
sure. To be
especially
freed.
after seeing him like that for 2 years.
Oh,
And
it was
seeing
that
him,
long?
yeah, and seeing him be able to leave like that,
Mm.
amazing thing right there. So
It's a
quite an experience for the whole family.
it's an interesting thing that could be taken as such a sad story, but it also could be taken as such a happy story. It's something to
Yeah,
celebrate.
gives me a lot of hope, that's for sure. But back to
Right.
the NFL, I mean, these people in the NFL, there's been rampant suffering from ALS in the NFL, and they're attributing this to the concussions. And sure enough, both these guys had concussions going through their football experience. Like I said, they played in high school, and they ended up playing, both of them playing semi-pro football as well.
Okay. Yeah, but going back to some of the things we learned over our season 1 here, and season 2 will take us to our 1-year anniversary in November, which will be very exciting. What were some other things that we had learned? Did you have can you remember a favorite episode?
Well, one of them was at the microphone issue, where we would record a show and realize that one of our microphones wasn't on. Oh my God. Remember how mad we would get? Well, we got to put it out there.
Just with that echoey sound in the background. Because
my God, I hated that. And of course, our problems that we've had with Zoom. We people love the side by side, and hopefully this one's going to work with side by side.
Yeah, we just got this figured out at the end of season 1. And Zoom gives us a lot better quality than Skype, just because Skype hiccups a lot. And I think video-wise, this gives us a little bit better video too.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, we started doing our special edition as well. And I like I said, I mean, every single episode, we learn a little bit more. We learn a bit more about how to bounce off of each other. And I know personally, I try not to go on these long diatribes because that's me, but I'm trying to get better at that.
Well, you know what? That's something that we talked about real recently, because we felt like we made a breakthrough a few shows ago. And we were talking after that, and we had decided it was because we just were inherently more interactive. We're actually interrupting each other because we were doing the opposite for most of this season. And that is because of Skype. We're trying really hard not to interrupt each other, because that would drain Skype's bandwidth or something and garble us up. And then it took a second to get out of it. So it was a mess. But yeah, a couple episodes ago, and the other thing is you really prepare very well for what you want to talk about, usually a political thing or something. And I see your track, and I don't want to interrupt it because I don't want you to lose the whole track. But as we talked about, I just decided I'm going to remember to hold that place. I'll interrupt you, but I'll bring you back to it.
You're really good at that too, is like bringing us back to the subject, just like you just did just now. Back to the things. I did want to say this, that one of the best things about doing this show over this season has been the feedback that we've been able to receive. And gosh, we just got some feedback from an old friend, Mike Erdman, just recently. And you were commenting that you hadn't heard that name for such a long time. I think since college, maybe. Yeah,
close to it anyway. Sure.
Well, get this, Barry, is after we got that comment, Mike got a hold of me, and he teaches a photography class, and because of COVID-19, he does it over Zoom. And so he had heard, remember, he was commenting on that quote that he had quoted me, which was, be light at this time because it's critical for your moving forward. And he had happened to have a quote that he had given his class a couple of weeks ago that was very similar. So he invited me to be a part of his class the other day and be encouraging to his class regarding this time of darkness and being light in the midst of darkness, and how this was a great opportunity for them, and to view it that way. And if they did, they would have success. And I was so honored. At the same time, it was just so awesome to be, I mean, I've known Mike since junior high school. It was just so awesome to be in there with him, and just, he's the same as he was back then. I mean, he's always been so interested in the subjects that he's teaching right now. And so, God, what an opportunity. And just, we've heard from so many people that new friends and old friends, and like you were saying, it's like, this is the thing that keeps us going.
Yeah, we have gotten a lot of awesome feedback. I think it's something about our generation that just don't leave comments on either. I ask every week. Mike did though.
Hmm.
I think he's a little more technologically adept, part of his job. But
Right,
I think
right.
most of us are not like afraid. People just a little bit younger than us will just, you know, comment a little too much and all these things. Go a little too overboard. Make it about me. But our fans, man, they will text us, email us, Facebook message us, anything, but leave it out there in public. Come on, guys, join in the fun.
Yeah, we want
You
to
know,
hear from you. It makes our day for
it
sure.
does, and I like to hear others' opinion on what we're talking about, their perspective, or even their unique story, because we're always talking about trying to give some kind of inspiration and information. That's kind of our credo.
You know, speaking of that, Barry, one of the things that Mike was teaching his class, I had a chance to log in beforehand. So you got all these young people that are in his photography class, and it was on that day they had to do their show their self portraits. That was the assignment, and Mike's lesson at the beginning was so inspirational, and it had to do with his quote was that everything you do in life is a self portrait. And he was saying that you know, when you take a self-portrait or of somebody, there's really two people in the picture. There's the person in the picture and the person that took the picture, because they're actually displaying themselves and their personality when they take the picture. And then he went on to teach the class that everything you do is a self-portrait. And he talked about, you know, he gave some examples. One of them was Instagram. And he said, you know, you ever notice that people on Instagram, a lot of them are just showing themselves and look how cool I am.
Oh, that's
And
what it's all
look at
about.
me here and look at me
Facebook
there and
too,
look
yeah.
what I'm doing here. And he says, have you ever noticed that you start to get the impression that this person is extremely arrogant?
Mm.
And all they think about is themselves? Or when you look at a Yelp review and you're looking at a restaurant, you see all these great comments, but then there's always the one person there that's writing, they give it a terrible review and they just talk all about how horrible the experience was. And he says, you ever notice that actually is telling more about the person than about the restaurant?
Sure.
He says, you know, anytime you put something in writing, that, you know, it's very important that you realize that never goes away. Like
Oh,
that's
that's
going to
so
be
true.
there forever. And you all are going to be out there looking for jobs. And let me tell you that the people that are looking to hire are going to scan the internet and they're going to look for what kind of person that you are. And if you're always negative about everything, they're not going to want to infuse that into their company. And I just thought, who teaches that kind of thing and instills that into young people? I just thought, what an awesome thing that he's doing, and really parlaying that kind of wisdom to people in a photography class.
It's important, especially at that age where they get caught up. There's, and this is well documented, that so many of the younger people these days have a lot of anxiety because of what you said about they think that they're trying to live up to all these perfect people that they see on Instagram and Facebook and other social media. And it's very much a facade. It causes a lot of anxiety. And just to back up what you said, I've said this before, I believe this, that social media it's probably not even in its adolescence yet. Comparatively speaking, it's been so primal. You know, it's literally about 12 years old. Facebook is about 12 years old. That's where most of us got started. What was there? There was a one before that.
Oh, MySpace.
Yes. And so it's just, it was very primal. It didn't take very long for me to realize that, it got so political in the Obama era. And then that's when people chose their sides and then went to war, because it's online road rage. You're hiding behind your keyboard. I'm terrible in a car. Ask Lisa. I am just yelling obscenities, you know, in my safe little space of my car all the time. Well, that's what social media is. You hide behind your keyboard, but I think people are just starting to really, as a whole, starting to accept the fact that even if it's your virtual self, you still have a reputation.
Yes. You
Yeah,
have a virtual DNA out there that
yeah.
people can go to and look at it. And you need to guard that
Hmm.
with your life, because it becomes just like Mike said, this is a self-portrait. I love your analogy, by the way, of being in a car and
Hmm.
just blurting out things.
It's road rage.
And you're right that people, I was comparing it to going into a public restroom and you see graffiti on there, and it's always some terrible thing about your mother or something that
It's
nobody
interesting.
would ever say to your face, but they
Yeah,
feel like they could just write it out there. And you're seeing this kind of thing on social media. It's like whatever comes to your mind, for some reason people feel compelled to just write it down and put it out there to the world.
right.
And I got a question for you. Does it seem to you like this, we talk a lot about, and you talked about it on the last interview that we did, that after 9/11,
Mm.
this patriotism that happened, which I'd
Hmm.
never experienced that kind of patriotism and that sort of oneness before. And now that COVID-19 has happened, you're really not seeing that. You're seeing a lot of parody. Would you attribute that to the social media phenomenon?
Ooh, oh, that's a strange question. It made me think about a post I saw today on Nextdoor. And our app out here in Cleveland Heights has been worse than Facebook as far as snipping.
Worse. Wow.
Yes, these neighbors get on each other and get offended and lay into each other like you wouldn't believe. And
Wow.
I'll throw a comment out there from time to time, like, before you tar and feather your neighbor, let's think about something else. Well, what I've kind of been seeing, and I made this comment today, there was talk about the East Cleveland schools having
Yeah.
this in their car parade that came into Cleveland Heights, and they're honking the horns and stuff. And somebody just asked what it was about. That became like 40 responses of varying degrees of, well, it started out in East Cleveland. That's where these schools are. But the one elementary school is right there in Cleveland Heights. That's why it was there. But one out of these 40 responses, so then it became about, well, they don't have any money. And then somebody that works there explained about how they're just doing some stuff for the kids. They miss the kids. They love the kids. And that was very touching. You got the one out of literally these 40 people, though. You got the one twice. She made a post trying to turn it into a racial thing
Ah,
and to get the board to blow up. And it used to work every time. It did not work this time. I had to make a comment about that because twice she said something about, you all don't say anything if it's about white people, but
ah.
because this is a black school system, nobody responded to her. Dude, I was moved by that. And that's kind of what I just was speaking to when I said we may not even be in our adolescence yet, but I do think we're going to grow, and I think we are. It's just
That's
a slow
positive. I
it's a
love
slow
that.
process.
I
So
hope you're
I
right about that.
I hope so too. Uh, we're all evolving. The whole tech revolution happened very quickly, very, very quickly. The internet, I made my first website in 1996. That was a
Wow.
long time ago,
Yeah.
but not so long
No,
ago.
you're right. In
You
in
know?
the in the in the window of technology,
Mm.
that's a long time ago, but in real life, that it was pretty much yesterday.
Yeah, to say the least. And then I remember it was around 2006 that I converted over to WordPress websites, which it's kind of what we call Web 2.0, when they're all database driven and talking to each other. You leave a response, it creates this, that makes this happen. Whereas before that, there used to be online brochures, and that was it.
Right. Right.
So now it's all interactive. And dude, that's 2006. So the way the world has changed since then to 2020, not that long of a span of time, not long at all.
You
But
know,
we are so used to it that it seems like a long time. It seems like our whole lives. It's, it's not.
Now in technology, I mean, you got a new smartphone that comes out every year, and it's so much better than the last smartphone. So it makes a 12-month period of time a long time now in the technology world. When at the same time, as we get older, time seems to be going by faster and faster.
Doesn't it?
It's like Christmas already. Again, you're actually mad because it's Christmas and you got to go shopping all over again. But
lie to our kids.
Yeah,
lie to our kids about Santa Claus.
Oh, you know what? I did.
We had this
never
conversation.
Forget how horrible that was, but I felt so guilty. I think this is a good time to transition into Joe Rogan's podcast, because we're talking about technology and that and the evolution of technology. And I thought it was interesting how he tied in that whole podcast into
why don't you explain what we're talking about?
Well, so Joe Rogan did a show, and I actually had never seen his podcast before. I know that you're a big fan of the podcast. The actual show was
Bob Lazar.
He had Bob Lazar and Jeremy Corbell on the show, and Bob Lazar is a physicist who worked at Los Alamos National Laboratories in New Mexico, and also on reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology at a site called S4 near the Area 51 Groom Lake operating location. And Jeremy Corbell is a contemporary artist. He's a documentary filmmaker, and they've got this new documentary on Netflix now called Bob Lazar, Area 51, and Flying Saucers.
And I'll tell you, it's awful. It's absolutely awful.
Oh, is it?
It is. That podcast.
I wasn't expecting that.
Oh, no, I had to watch it a second time because I was really tired the first time. I was kind of falling in and out of sleep. And even
You're talking about the documentary, right?
The documentary.
Okay.
Correct. Right. The podcast is amazing. And I kept asking you to listen to it because I told you all about it. And but the documentary is, some of those cheesy UFO documentaries are like they try to talk real mysterious. And it's just they had Mickey Rourke do this intermittent narration. I didn't know it was Mickey Rourke because he sounds like a really old man with this real garbled voice. You couldn't understand for the most part. It was horrible. And that producer guy largely made himself the star of it, which was like,
I'm not surprised by that.
Oh, it was. So no, don't bother with that, but listen to that podcast because now Bob Lazar is a very reluctant, whatever you want to call him, UFO guy, witness or participator, whatever. And Rogan drug him onto that podcast. And Lazar was like, suffering from a migraine through the whole first half of it. Largely, I think he's just really stressed, anxiety.
Very stressed, yeah.
Yeah. But Rogan is such a UFO nut. And he's been following Lazar for the 30 years or so that this has been public. And so Rogan's firing the questions. He wants those answered, just like you or I would. So I didn't even ask you, what did you think of the podcast?
I found it extremely compelling. First off, I would say that I felt sorry for Bob Lazar. I have to say that it's funny because Joe Rogan talked about skeptics and how he didn't like skeptics, and I was extremely skeptical when I came into this, and I tried very hard to come in with a very open mind. And I think I was able to accomplish that because I started to feel empathy for Bob Lazar as I was watching this. Now, his work that he did at the site next to Area 51 was when he was in his 20s, and he only was there for 6 months. And he tells the whole story about how he got involved with this whole thing, and the story about how he had put a jet engine into his Volkswagen or something like that, and that's how he got attention. That's how he got the attention, and that's how they ended up putting him into this whole thing. But
because they wanted a fresh set of eyes to try
somebody that could think outside the box
and reverse engineer this, what seems to be an anti-gravity reactor. Right. And this is this sphere that so he's introduced into Area 51
and he's working on this reactor. And the interesting thing was that the military that was really overseeing this, or this group of scientists, they had some pretty serious rules that he could only speak with his partner. He could only share information between he and this other guy, coincidentally named Barry.
And he was given no more information that was absolutely necessary to finish that task of the day.
So the way he described it was, there was this sphere that I saw it as probably the size of a beach ball, and you could take off the top of it, and when you put it together, it would automatically come on. And the first thing that he said was, there was no wires whatsoever in this device, which blew his mind. And secondly, when it came on, the guy Barry asked him to go ahead, try to touch it, and he couldn't touch it, as if there was some sort of a force field around it. And they surmised that this was the device that powered these vehicles, of which they had 9 vehicles in this.
He saw 9
hangars.
All different, all the same propulsion, but just different designs.
Right. Now, I found some things. So here's why I felt sorry for him, is because eventually he's out of this whole organization.
He screwed it up. He said that was his one regret, is that, people are like, did you ever regret coming out about this? And he did. We'll get to that, because that's what people want to know. Well, why did this guy come out and, getting famous from this? No, he didn't want to do this. He was trying to make sure he didn't disappear.
Some things happened where the security, of course, is very high on this, and things happened where his wife started to think that he was cheating on him because he had to do these things at all hours, and he had to be away for 2 or 3 weeks.
He couldn't tell her anything,
and he couldn't tell her because of the security. So inadvertently, she ended up having an affair. Well, they were monitoring the phone lines at his house and really monitoring him. And as a result, the security forces had decided that, hey, this guy is a risk now because his family life is not stable. And they started to not let him come into work. Well, he started to become paranoid about that. So he thought, well, these guys aren't going to just let me go out into public. So I need to protect myself. And so what he did in order to protect himself was tell his friends about it. And because he knew that there were these flight schedules for testing the actual vehicles.
And I want to explain something there.
Go right ahead.
They figured out how to fly them, but they didn't know how they worked. And he used the analogy. It's like if you transported a motorcycle back into the mid 1800s, wagon wheel days, eventually they're going to figure out how to start it up and ride it. They just won't understand how the hell it works. Same thing.
Well, once he told his friends about it, they ended up getting caught viewing these test flights that apparently were on Wednesday nights, and then he was really in for it. And he ended up going to a talk show host. By the last name is Knapp.
George Knapp,
and
the leading UFO investigator
and I really saw that as this was him trying to protect his life, and that's really why he came out with this whole thing. I was trying to put that all in a nutshell as why he came this, because I was skeptical. Why would a guy come out and say that he saw this, which really had ruined his whole life?
And
either he's trying to get attention or he's telling the truth.
And he's never taken any money for it, not from the autobiography. Even Rogan, as usual, offered to pay for his flight to come out for the podcast. He didn't accept that money either. He paid for his own tickets.
The reason I felt so bad for this guy is, obviously he believes everything that he saw. It seemed very apparent to me that he was witnessing something that was very different. He's a physicist. He knows that what he was working on is something that really science hasn't developed, or something that he hasn't seen, or at least that's what he believed. There are people that are, as Barry was talking about this UFO documentary, there are people that are crazy nuts about UFOs, and that's drawn a lot of those people into his life, people sleeping on his front lawn, as he talked about. And so this has
He
been,
pleaded with people to not come to
please
his
don't
house.
come to my house. And so, like he said, people would come up to him and they're just like, "You got to talk to me, man." And there's schizophrenics and things like that were involved. So there's a lot of clouded mystery around this whole thing. A few of the things that came out to me that jumped off the page were that, again, he wasn't allowed to ask questions. He
Right.
wasn't. He was very separated. He was only allowed to work on the propulsion system, none of the other parts of it. He had talked about going into one of these vehicles and how it was otherworldly. And he had also talked about how he was told that these vehicles had come from a star system called Zeta Reticuli, which is a binary star system in the southern hemisphere. But he also said along with that, that many times he was given misleading or false information in order to protect the security, so that if he were to ever go out and speak about it, that he might sound crazy, and also they would know where this information came
That's
from.
what it was, so they could track who the leak was. They would give individual people certain individual misinformation. Now, another thing he said that they do on occasion is plant people that seem like loons that are talking about UFOs. They saw UFOs that were abducted or whatever, so that people would be like, yeah, they're all loons, and I don't want to say I believe in it because I don't want to be identified with the loons.
Well, it made me think that the partner that he had, whose name was Barry, who Bob had said he didn't know this for sure, but believed that this guy Barry had been involved in the program for a long time. It made me start to believe that maybe Barry was giving him misinformation as well, and quite possible, because he talked about how there at one time, and this was in 1988, that the Russians were actually there sharing information with the Americans, and at a certain point he was told, he didn't actually see the Russians, but he was told by Barry that the quote commies were there. And then he learned that the Russians were kicked out of the site and not allowed to come back. And I started to think, now that's interesting. Why would we even attempt to share that information with the Russians during the height of the Cold War?
Right.
That didn't seem to jive to me. But
they were trying desperately to figure things out, and they were getting nowhere. So it seemed like a good idea until what you just brought up is he said one of the other teams obviously had a major breakthrough. And that's when they ejected the Russians, and they were never allowed back because we didn't want to share the technological information.
I thought the guy, Bob, was very good at saying, this is what I saw with my own eyes, and this is the part that I'm speculating about.
Oh, he
and
was.
So I came away with that as, okay, I believe that I had a hard time swallowing that this came from some binary star system, and that he didn't say anything about seeing alien bodies or anything like that. Only this apparatus. So I had a hard time believing because they went on to talk about advanced life and how this advanced life form that maybe was millions of years old had been able to find this, and this maybe this is where we're evolving to and everything. I thought those were giant leaps in speculation.
It's stuff that I've theorized about for many years.
We've talked about it as well.
Oh, we have. Because what they said is they speculate because the beings that have been talked about, and they're really very consistent, have no sex organs. And, the big has the green bodies, the big eyes, very lithe arms and legs. So they're not physically strong. And the speculation is that they are a hybrid of organic and technological advance merging. And I know we're heading towards that.
Well, it's interesting that you're saying that, because I really thought that part was one of the most fascinating parts of the show, is that they were speculating that these creatures that people have reported on, and now let me just make clear that Bob Lazar didn't say that he saw anything like that. but there's been these people that have said that they've seen this, and as Barry said, no sex organs on these people.
Mhm.
Weird that they always, the people that are reporting seem to say that they were experimented on, and that was especially regarding their sexual organs. But
Mhm.
that these beings, okay, could be maybe even complete androids. Maybe they're actually machines,
Mhm. Mhm.
and we are seeing where, these cybernetic type beings, much like the movie The Terminator, have been developed here on
Mhm.
Earth, where
Sex
they,
industry's big on that, dude.
well, and not even that, but it just, we're seeing where they're developing human like people that can actually, not people, but they're machines, but they
Mhm.
look like people that
Trying to
have
make androids.
artificial intelligence in them
Mhm.
and machine learning.
It's
And
coming.
so we're seeing that kind of thing. And something that I brought up to your attention, I think this was on a side conversation that you and I were having, that a lot of this kind of stuff is actually in the Bible.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
you
we
do.
look at the book of the Revelation, where you have this person called the Antichrist, and you have the false prophet, and you have this thing that's happening where they're creating a mechanism that looks just like the Antichrist is a person, looks just like him, and they put him all over the country. The false prophet causes people to worship this person, and that this machine is animated to look exactly like the actual person, who has the power to cause fire to come down from heaven to destroy his enemies. And we look at GPS technology that's out there, and laser technology right now. So I just wanted to point out
But
that,
you made mention about, you said there's something in the Bible they said about an implant. Implant.
yes,
What
yeah,
was
well,
that?
there's it's called the mark of the beast, and the mark actually is something that goes inside of the back of your right hand or into your forehead. And so you're not able to buy and
iPhone into
sell
your
or
head.
be a part of society if you don't have the mark. And so with as Barry's bringing up, iPhones, satellite technology, GPS, the ability that you can actually track people and where their movements are, and that you can download all this data on these people. Well, with chip technology, these things can now be implanted. And by the way, Barry, there are companies out there, not here in the United States, that are implanting that type of technology into people right now.
Sure. Hey, we chip our dogs here.
Yeah,
Sure. I mean, that's right now, we just hold it in our hands and we're all obsessed with it, staring into the little screen all day, no matter where we are. Hell, you can't even get somebody to go after a light turns green on the road because they're staring at their damn phone.
well,
Uh,
these guys on the show were bringing up the fact that that maybe this technology that keeps evolving is what we're supposed to do. Bees make
oh, right.
honeycombs, and maybe this is what we're supposed to do. And really, if you take a look at the prophecies that are in the Bible, I don't think these guys are too far off. I
Mm,
mean, they're not looking at it from a biblical point of view, but I found myself in agreement with a lot
mhm,
of the worldly things that they were saying
mhm.
as it applies to the Bible, and found myself in agreement that, you know what, these things are happening on their own volition, that
Mhm.
they've been foretold since for thousands of years. And how could anybody predict that these things would happen that are happening right before our
20
very eyes
years
right
ago,
now?
20 years ago, 30 years ago, you could not have this conversation, really. Um, I know that I was still interested. I used to subscribe to that magazine called Discover and
Oh
read
yeah,
about quantum
quantum
mechanics
physics. Yeah,
theories. Yeah,
yeah,
but the best analogy that they made is regarding our possible change in evolution is, you mentioned the beehives. These bees have been making beehives for, who knows how long, but they're always the same. They're
right.
beautiful, they're sophisticated, they're really cool, but they're always the same. Whereas we are always trying to make everything better. It can't be fast enough. It can't be small enough. It can't be more powerful enough. So whether it's G4, G5, G10 technology, a faster processor, a larger screen, higher definition, all of these things, it has to be better and better and better. And the great analogy was, so the caterpillar who's making this cocoon, who's spending all that, he doesn't know why. It's just a prime directive that's recorded in his DNA. When he finishes his cocoon, he ends up blossoming into this whole other creature, this beautiful butterfly. And so it's very possible that that's what our drive is, this insane drive to develop this technology to these incredible heights, to where we're going to merge with it completely and emerge as an entirely new superior being.
Well, in many ways, I agree with what you're saying. And as I thought about the whole beehive thing, it's like, okay, so bees didn't actually learn how to make the honeycomb. They've always been doing that. That, like you said, that's put into their DNA. I believe that God put that into their
Sure.
DNA. But God made us, according to the Bible, in his image, and God is a creative spirit. And so I don't believe that any of this technology is a mistake. I don't believe that the technology is from the devil. I believe that God has inspired us with the will and to do to make these types of technology. And again, how could he have predicted, how could anybody have predicted that these things would happen and the technology would be available exactly the way it's predicted? Another thing that's in the book is that there are these two prophets that are going to be at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, and that they'll be killed. And when they're killed, this is during the time of the tribulation, that the whole world would celebrate during a 3-day period and give gifts to each other. Well, how in the world could the whole world even be notified within that quick a period of time, unless there was satellite technology for everybody to be able to look at it and then have enough time to go out and buy gifts and everything like that? I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there that points to the technology that we have today that was written 2,000 years ago.
You know, another point that was a really great subject matter is brought up on that podcast was the element 115,
Oh, yeah.
which was the fuel for the UFOs that Bob Lazar had been talking about since he became public in the early 90s or 89, whenever that was. And, government denied it. It got added to the elemental periodic chart in, I think, 2014.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, they claim to have been able to create some of it that could last like a millisecond in like 2003. So Lazar explained that, well, that Beta Reticuli galaxy and the planet that this is supposedly from has much heavier forms of elements than we do, and that element 115 is available abundantly there in a stable form. So it's not evaporating, it's not giving off radiation, it's just completely stable. And the fuel for the UFOs, well, we're coming up to a point where we can manufacture it artificially. We just haven't got it stable yet. But it's pretty much amazing that we got it added to the elemental chart.
Well, I think the really cool thing that they were saying about that is, as they were speculating if these so-called beings from another planet were more advanced than us, Bob Lazar was saying, well, really, maybe if they have this in abundance, to them, this is really primitive stuff. This is like us using fire with wood or the steam engine.
Then we move
so
to the combustion engine finally.
If there are these other people, that they may not be more advanced than us. This just may be what was already there when they got
what they started with.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was an interesting way of looking at it. Again,
it was.
I found it to be very compelling. I think people should take a look at it and have an open mind. Again, there was a part where Joe Rogan went off and talked about, he hates skeptics and they should look at hardline science. And I'm a person that is deep believer in what it says in the Bible. I'm skeptical about things that would challenge the Bible, but I do want to look at those things with an open mind and find ways to find common ground and find out how maybe those things could be incorporated into the Bible, as I've been able to talk about here today. And again, being able to talk about it with you, Barry, is a treat.
Oh, it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. Another thing about the propulsion and the anti-gravity reactor and the way the UFO flies, when we see footage of them and they're just in one place and then another and darting from one side to another, uh, impossible, just defying physics. And we would say if a human being was in there, they'd be splattered by the inertia and
Right.
everything. And well, what he says is, this anti-gravity machine creates this cone-like dome over top of the UFO, and it distorts because if you could harness gravity, which we didn't even recognize was a true way, we'd never known what gravity really was, but
Still
it's
don't.
it's only recently recognized gravitational waves, and and you're right, we still really don't. And so this makes this anti-gravity and forms almost like a force field around the UFO, the flying saucer. And he says if you walk directly underneath of it, you can't even see the saucer because it's distorting the light right around it. And so it also can distort time and space. And so I don't think they actually said this, but it seems to me, and I've wondered about this for a little while, is, you wonder how something can travel 30 light years.
Right.
And yeah, well, if it's distorting time, that's what, when you see it just jumping around in the video footage that we see of UFOs, they're always jumping around from one spot to another. And I think it's distorting time. I think it's
Well,
doing minor time
it
jumps.
makes sense, Barry, because if you look at the theory of relativity, it has everything to do with gravity and
Yeah.
time and space distortion. And this, the guy, the guy that takes off on a rocket ship and goes light
Yeah.
speed, and then comes back, and he's a young man, and everybody's
Yeah.
old. It's a
Yeah.
very interesting thing. And again, relating that to the Bible, Jesus calls the Bible calls God light. He is light, and so and it says that God is outside of time, and so he can come into time. He's looking at time like it's an object, and he can come into time. And there are times in the Bible in his glorified body where he appears in one place and then can appear in a completely different place many miles away. This is a distortion of time and space, and these things all completely made sense to me. They
Mhm.
Oh, and one last thing he said too, and this is important, I think, is that if we as Americans can master gravity based on what Barry was just talking about, from a military point of view, game over.
Oh
Nobody
yeah,
can touch us. I mean,
that's
if
what he said.
we could have a force field around all of
Anything we want.
our and nobody could touch us for real. Nobody could touch us. So this brought me back to this whole thing of, could this actually be something that maybe isn't from another planet? And much like I saw this documentary called "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon," where it actually portrays the fact that we may not have actually gone to the moon. I know that sounds crazy, but
It
it was very
does.
compelling evidence that was inside of this documentary that
Yeah.
the Saturn V rockets are actually the same rockets that carried nuclear warheads, and that this was really more of an arms race than a space race. And when you take a look at the Van Allen radiation belt that scientists know about, that you would actually need a craft that had lead around it an inch thick, and that we don't have any kind of rocket that could carry anybody through that they would, if we didn't have that astronauts would have died going through that Van Allen radiation belt.
Mm.
There's other evidence as well, that maybe this was similar, that the military actually knows all about this, and that's why Bob wasn't allowed to share information with other people, only talk to his partner, and that this is something that's so well guarded that we wouldn't want our enemies to have this kind of technology, because much like we talked about the space program, if
Mhm.
China were to get this, they would be able to dominate us.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of things to unpack on this whole thing that we'll never be able to unpack on this show.
I know, but it's exciting and more information is coming out. Just I think it was this morning I saw when I go digging for my inspirational videos and stuff like that after on the second half of my COVID-19 workouts. Uh, I came across this UFO documentary. It apparently was something of a trailer, like a 9-minute trailer, and it's for Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind.
What is
And
that?
it's a documentary that's coming out, and I forget the doctor's name. That it's his documentary, but he said it seems like it was primarily about that where we are now is we've just gotten to the point that we know UFOs exist. It's full knowledge that the government's been studying them for all these decades now. We used to think they used to deny Project Blue Book, and then they
Right.
said it was now we know they've been studying them all this time. We know that for a fact. So he says and how they would plant people, silly people, as I mentioned a little while ago, that would act like they've been abducted or seen UFOs, but they were discrediting the real people, by
Right.
planting loony people out there. He says, so the next phase, he goes, this is going to happen. I'm trying to think of how he said it is, oh, I got to go back and watch it again. But he already was telling us what the government is going to be feeding the media about impending intergalactic war. That they want, okay, that aliens, yes, we're all going to accept that aliens do exist, except that they're not benevolent, that they're violent, that they are a threat, and we need to get this space race going or something like that because of a fear of intergalactic war. I'm like, wow, that's a jump. But
It is a jump.
mhm.
Don't you think? I mean, as we take a look at COVID-19 and look at this through the lens of COVID-19, doesn't it seem to you that that the government actually has an advantage to deceive us and make us fear?
Yeah,
It's
COVID-19 is
like,
not really that real.
I'm not saying it's not real. I'm saying this, that they seem to look at the $2 trillion stimulus package, look
Hmm.
at the new one that's coming out that they want to be bigger than that. It seems to me that fear is how they can capitalize. They can capitalize on our fears in order to gain more power. And I'm personally not buying into the intergalactic war thing, although it's exciting to think
That
about.
was a
But
warning.
I
He's
do
saying
believe
that it's
that,
misinformation.
yeah, I believe that that's information that can cause us to pump a whole bunch more of our tax dollars into a program. And I don't know. I've become jaded for sure on what.
Yeah,
I don't trust anything the news is telling me
I
or
don't
anything
either.
the government is telling me. These guys are rascals, man.
No, I totally agree. That's what I got out of that trailer of that documentary,
Yeah.
is that he was preparing us for that's the next big step in manipulating us. And it's worth knowing about, being aware about, just in case you start hearing that kind of stuff.
Well, and you hear this kind of stuff and you think, man, this could be used in so many ways to deceive us. And as I take, again, my biblical view of this, there's something that's called the rapture, where people disappear from the planet Earth and meet the Lord in heaven. And but boy, the world that's left behind could easily blame that on space aliens and things like that. So I just think it's really interesting that this is all coming out right now. I do believe that there's a lot of stuff that this is what I came away with after I watched the show. There's just a lot of stuff we just don't know. We have no idea who's
I
telling the
know.
truth. And I believe that that guy is a sincere person,
I do
but
too.
he fully admitted he didn't know everything either.
No, that's very true. I'm just going to mention that we are aware that we are at an hour and 16 minutes. We normally stop at an hour. We talked beforehand and said we're just going to have a good time, and just, we didn't follow our regular format, which, we started out by intentionally taking a look back at how we started. You and I talked about the other day how just organically our format kind of got signed, sealed, and delivered. We do a third of the show approximately on what we call the O5O part, and that's talking about how we better ourselves with our careers and inspirationally and that kind of stuff. And then in this middle segment, we talk about whether it's metaphysical or this kind of stuff, UFO kind of thing may lead into the spiritual stuff somewhere in there. We segue into that organically, and then that leads us to current events / politics. That really came to be early on. our format. You know, it
You know,
serves us well.
if you think about it, though, we covered all those things today in this, in this, and it just
See,
kind of spontaneously
see,
happened.
it's what we do. It's what we do. So I wonder, knowing where we're at here, if you wanted to talk about taking a look forward. Okay, so we took a look back at over 50 starting over. How about do you want to we talk about our dreams of what we would like to do with this going forward in the future? And I don't know how personal it is to us, or do you want to just like let it fly and talk about some of our dreams?
Yeah, you go first.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, it's kind of, I know for me, starting off early with the podcast, thinking and daydreaming about, I would like the very next step, I would love to see Merle spin off his own channel and to talk about whatever he wants to talk about in whatever format he wants to talk about. Meaning for you, it's largely your Christianity, your deep Christian practices, and it is you're a political historian, and you're a devout Republican. So it could be, you know, it could be all of that can be its own show. You
I would
know,
correct one thing and say
sure.
that I'm not a devout Republican. I'm a conservative, and that
Oh,
means I'm a constitutionalist, and I
oh yeah.
don't trust the Republicans or the Democrats.
Thank you
But
for correcting me. That's an
yeah,
important point.
it is a very important
Hmm.
point. I believe that absolute power corrupts absolutely, and
Agreed.
we've got a problem on both sides of the aisle. So I
Mm.
am certainly not beholden to the Republican Party. If somebody is supporting the Constitution and really the original intent of the Constitution, and that's really the thing that I love, which I believe is an inspired document,
Hmm.
then I don't care if they've got a D or an R, or if they're a
Okay.
libertarian or whatever. I would vote for that person. But
That's interesting. I'm glad you said that.
and you know, my whole thing is you're right as far as my Christianity goes. I love the Lord, I love Jesus, and I believe that history is his story. And so the things that have been happening in history, as they say, history is bound to repeat itself. The other thing too is that there are hundreds and hundreds of biblical prophecies that are in the Bible. It's the only book that actually foretells the future. So as I look at history, I can see how it fits into his story. And as I look at the future, I can see where this whole story is leading us, as I was mentioning about the book of the Revelation. And there's many other books inside of the Bible that talk through that. So yeah, you're right, Barry.
So we were
That's
talking
where I
about
come
your own
from.
channel. See how passionate you are about that? So it would be really nice where you can just, you know, people come on this. We talked about we've got a good fan base that people are really enjoying what we're doing. I say that very humbling. It is very humbling that when we get some
Yeah.
really powerful feedback, and I know that a lot of people fall in love with you and would like to see more of what you have to offer. So I would really like that. We've discussed this a lot, and we've always said and agreed, but this is the mothership. This what we do right here will never go away.
I don't believe that anything happens by an accident,
Mm,
and this really has come together almost magically, Barry. And
mhm.
I always believe that this is why I did the show in the first place, is because I felt in my heart that it was time to do this, and
Yeah.
it just lined up so perfectly. I just believe it is God's will, and I have this dream in my heart. I really do, Barry, to be able to share the good news, and it comes from my love of the Bible and the Lord and history. One thing I wanted to say, though, is that there was a time in my life where I just believed that God was not satisfied with me, and that I had to do something in order to satisfy him and lead this good life. And there was an epiphany that I had several years ago where I learned that it was my trying to do that whole thing was really based out of self-righteousness. And I found out from the word that my righteousness isn't something that I can put together on my own power whatsoever. It all comes from the Lord, and it's a gift from him. And boy, that was a freeing moment for me to realize that God accepts me for exactly who I am, all my mistakes, past, present, and future, he's already forgiven, and that I can just live my life and just be me. And I was
And
born
this is why
at such
you
a
need
time
your
as
own
this.
channel.
Well, this is just like the show too, Barry,
Hmm.
because we come on the show, we're not trying to be somebody that we're not.
Correct.
And
That's
what's
very important.
it is,
That's
and that
very important because
it's what makes the show
people
successful.
detect being unauthentic. Why can't I say?
Inauthentic.
Thank you, thank you. And it's a big turnoff. So it's been very important, and it's a time in our life. There's something like after you turn 50, you just don't give a shit that much anymore about
There is
things
something
that.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, you just want to be authentic and let go of the other stuff, at least a lot more so. I want to just get back to because we got another show to do actually in a little
Yeah.
while. So talking about looking forward, our dreams go way further than just that. That's just where they have started, about spinning this channel off into other channels, bringing on other guests. But we have a much deeper goal, and it's really kind of, I don't know how to. We always, when we talk about it, it takes a lot of words because we don't have great terminology to describe it all. But kind of like what we have talked a lot about is setting up a first kind of gated community that is it's to support people in our retire I say so-called retirement years, as a small society where we help each other out. We part of over 50 starting over, what I'd really like it to turn into is this retirement society. I don't want to say retirement, I want to let go of
It's the
that.
next phase. It's just the
Yes.
next phase, where we can like be able to be ourselves, not have this amazing amount of corporate stress that's on everybody,
Mhm.
live our lives with our friends and family, and be able to do the things that cause us passion. And what both of us have found out is that most of what causes passion is being able to put our eyes on other people and help other
Help
people.
other people.
And under really the guise of compassionate capitalism, we found that there's opportunity in that whole umbrella to
Mm.
help other people and provide for yourself and your family at the same time. And you
Yeah.
know what, Barry, I see us like being able to kick back in our houses with our lawns. Maybe I'd like to live on some water somewhere,
Hmm.
and have a
Hmm.
boat, and
Hmm.
my kids, my wife, my mom, your family,
Hmm.
Lisa, and just be able to laugh, 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 and just have
Yes.
fun. And at the same time, we're doing something that we can wrap our hearts around and feel so good about.
Helping each other.
Man,
Uh,
that is like the kind of thing where you're at the end of the movie, and it's not the end of the movie, but or the end of life. It's just the end of the movie where the good music starts playing.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this looks like the start of a beautiful thing, and we just wrap
We
our arm
we
around
get
each
to
other,
yes, we get to employ people, our peers, to do the
bring
kind of
other people
jobs.
into it. Yeah.
Bring as many people that want to come into it as they want, where you get to do like the part-time job of your choice, where you get up in the morning and you can't wait to get on with the day. You got 4 hours. I want to be
It's
at
not even
that
like a
point.
job, though. It's
No,
like
I
you
want to
get
do
to
like
do
some
this.
fitness instructing,
Right.
helping
Right.
inspire people of my peers, and just take them through some workouts that are fun, not yelling at them like a drill sergeant, but just inspiring people to get in shape. I want there to be a really nice restaurant there, people that want to work part-time at it a little bit during the day. Tend to the garden as self-sufficient as possible. Gardening is a very important aspect of this. Solar panels, sustainable energy as much as possible, push those boundaries. For those that want to take this on, outreach programs that help benefit the homeless problem, or whatever else is most needed. That kind of thing. You get up in the morning and you can't wait to get on with your day. And there's just a whole lot of doing brunch with your close friends, and hey, shared transportation. Not everybody's going to need a car. Maybe every 3 to 4 people need a car, and you
I
get
kind
on.
of I kind of like the golf cart kind of thing too,
Oh,
man.
I
Like
do
I'd
too.
like to have one of those, and like
Me
you know,
too.
get okay, everyone get in the golf cart. Or the other thing too is bicycle riding. There's
Yes.
got to be some man. This is one thing
Yes.
Barry and I both really love is
Yes.
bike riding and everything, and just being on the trail, hearing the sound of your tires. And there's
Yeah.
something so inspirational about this, having that conversation and everything. We can make a whole show just on our bicycles. You
Oh,
know,
that would be so fun. So fun.
no kidding, right?
We'll
And
have to
just
do that.
being out in nature. I love nature. I
We
know
got
you do too.
phones. Yes.
Yeah.
We'll have to do that. We'll have to put our heads around that. We could probably do that with our iPhones if we have them strapped to one of those selfie sticks or some shit like that. And earbuds. I
Yep,
bet we could do
exactly.
this.
And just being able to share what we're seeing, as well as
Oh
just
yeah.
the ideas that just are inspired by that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Even books could come out of that whole thing. You know,
absolutely.
I mean, this all sounds like crazy fantasy
No, it
world
doesn't.
thing. I just think that's how it starts. Is just
It's it
don't limit your mind.
Exactly. Let's get over the limiting beliefs, but more so is the necessity of this, because we are all living longer. And if you don't want to work until you're 75 years old doing something you don't like, then how about start wrapping your heads around what we're talking about, where you can get into a sustainable so-called retirement. You know what? But anyways, we are living way longer. So if you got 40 years of so-called retirement where you can't do a trade job anymore or whatever, or you just got so damn burnt out of doing your corporate America gig, which of course is going to happen, then we need to transition into this more sustainable and happy. Be happy these last 30, 40 years of your
Well, you
life.
know, something you and I both have in common is that our dads passed away at an early
And
age.
Lisa's, yeah, yeah.
And you know, I mean, and same with Anne Marie.
Uh,
Her dad died
Jeez.
when he was 32.
Oh,
You know, and so this is it. It's
mm,
we're not going out that way. And
mhm.
part of that is, I know one thing is the stress of corporate America is what killed my dad,
Yeah.
and the way that he was internalizing it.
Mm,
There's a better way. This
mm,
is our one, the gift that we have is so precious
mm.
that we want to just be able to think outside the box, because happiness is where it's at.
Yes.
And it's up to us to find out how to have happiness. A lot of that has to do with our attitudes and what we say to ourselves, but
Hmm.
there also is a responsibility on us to come up with ideas. And I really believe
Yes.
these ideas are inspired ideas that come from the Lord. And
Agreed.
anyway, I look forward to a happy future. But I just want to say this to you, Barry, that man, going through, I've known you since I was in I think I
19.
was 20, 19,
We were
19 years
19.
old. Going through life with you as a friend
Mm.
has been a great blessing to me.
It's been unbelievable. I can't imagine where my life would be without knowing
Same,
you. Yeah.
same here, Barry. I'm
Well,
getting choked up here.
yeah, yeah. Well, I like to talk about it's sticking our necks out there talking about our dreams of where this is going to go, but it will not take shape if we don't do that. And it will take shape if we continue to evolve this vision and have others share it. The right people will come into our paths and help us make this take shape. So I think we need to talk about that a little more. What a great way to end season 1, man.
I think so too, Barry. It's been a great experience being
Yeah,
able to do this. It's a dream come true, actually. And
it is.
I think that this is an example to everybody else is, don't let anybody stomp on your dream. And if
Mhm.
you have something in your heart like that, let her rip.
Absolutely. With that, hour and a half in, our longest podcast ever. And we got other things we got to get on right now. But I want to say thank you all for coming on this journey with us. And we hope that we get to share a lot more of it with you. As I pleaded before, please leave comments, engage with us,
Right.
ask us questions, share your opinion, call us out. We appreciate all of it. And with that, Merle, you give the parting words.
I just wanted to. I think I already did. Is this is, like I said, this is a dream come true for both of us. Let your dream shine, and good things are going to happen. Absolutely. So we're
All right.
looking forward to seeing you in season 2.
See you in season 2.